I paid $72,000 for my daughter's dream wedding. The oceanfront venue, the flowers, the live band, the champagne towers, everything she said would make her happy. But 1 month later, I sat in a dark editing room and watched the truth on a wedding video. My daughter's husband had another woman. My son was planning to steal my beach house. And my own children were laughing about how easy it was to control a lonely old man. They thought I was their bank. They forgot I still owned the vault.
1 month after my daughter Emily's wedding, I was sitting alone in my beach house in Charleston, South Carolina, watching the morning light crawl across the Atlantic. My name is Thomas Whitaker, 62 years old, a widower, and the owner of 3 successful furniture stores my late wife and I built from nothing. People in town called me generous. My children called me whenever they needed money. That morning, my coffee had barely cooled when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. "Mr. Whitaker?" a man asked. His voice was low, tense. "Yes?" "This is Daniel Price. I filmed Emily's wedding last month." I remembered him immediately. Daniel was in his early 40s, quiet, professional, with tired eyes and a camera always hanging from his shoulder. He had moved through the wedding like a shadow, capturing every smile, every toast, every lie I hadn't known was a lie yet. "I need you to come to my studio," he said. "Alone." My hand tightened around the phone. "Why?" He hesitated. "There's something in the footage, something disturbing. Please don't tell Emily. Not yet." Before I could answer, I heard laughter from the upstairs guest wing. My son, Mason Whitaker, 29 years old, unemployed most months and charming only when he wanted something, had been living in my house for nearly 2 years. Beside him was his girlfriend, Tiffany Blake, 27, beautiful in a sharp, polished way, always dressed like someone expecting a richer life to arrive any minute. They had recently asked me to renovate the entire guest floor so they could stay comfortably until they got back on their feet. Back on their feet had somehow become permanent. Then there was Emily Whitaker, my 35-year-old daughter. Elegant, educated, and perfectly practiced at sounding loving while asking for impossible things. Just yesterday, she had called to ask for $50,000 to invest in a new house with her husband Ryan Caldwell, a smooth real estate agent with expensive suits, perfect teeth, and eyes that never stayed still long enough to trust. "Mr. Whitaker?" Daniel said again. "I'll come," I told him, "today, if possible." Whew. After we hung up, I walked toward the kitchen and saw my business credit card on the counter. Mason's name wasn't on it, but the receipt beside it showed a new gaming system, speakers, and a giant television. Before I could process that, Tiffany's voice floated in from the patio. "Sooner or later, this house is going to be ours anyway." I stopped cold. Across the fence, my neighbor Clara Bennett, a widowed woman in her 70s with silver hair and eyes that noticed everything, stood watering her roses. She looked at me, then toward the backyard where Mason had once again been showing 2 strangers around like he owned the place. That was when Daniel's warning stopped feeling like a mystery. It started feeling like the first crack in something much bigger. Daniel Price's studio sat above a quiet print shop on King Street, tucked between an art gallery and a closed antique store. When I arrived, the sky over Charleston had turned gray, and the sidewalk still smelled like last night's rain. Daniel opened the door before I knocked twice. He looked different from the wedding day. No easy smile, no camera strap, just a pale face and nervous hands. "Thank you for coming alone, Mr. Whitaker," he said. "I wish I didn't have to show you this." He led me into a small editing room with blackout curtains and 3 monitors glowing against the darkness. On the desk sat hard drives, memory cards, and a paper cup of untouched coffee. Daniel explained that one of his backup cameras had been left running near the hotel dressing rooms before the ceremony. It was supposed to capture hallway movement, he said, but the door was cracked open. I didn't notice until I reviewed the raw footage. Then he pressed play. The screen showed Ryan Caldwell in his wedding tuxedo, standing inside a private dressing room at the Harbor Hotel. Across from him was a blonde woman I had never seen before. She was elegant, maybe in her early 30s, wearing a fitted cream dress and red lipstick. "That's Vanessa," Daniel said quietly. I heard him say her name later in the clip. Ryan touched her face like they had done this 100 times before. Then he kissed her, not quickly, not by mistake, but slowly, confidently, like a man with no shame. My stomach turned colder when Ryan began talking. "Emily thinks this is romantic," he said with a laugh. "But it's just a smart move. Her father already paid for the wedding, and after tonight the gift money goes into our account." Vanessa asked about the house. Ryan smiled and said, "Thomas Whitaker wants his daughter happy. We push him right, he'll help with the down payment too." Then he leaned closer to her and whispered, "The old man will pay. Emily just needs to cry at the right time." Daniel paused the video, but I could still hear Ryan's voice in my head. He handed me a printed sheet showing the camera time, hotel location, audio track, and file number. Then he gave me a flash drive. "This is the original footage," he said, "unedited, full audio, metadata included." I stared at the small black drive in my palm. It felt heavier than metal. It felt like proof that my family had been turned into a business plan. "Keep watching," Daniel said. I didn't want to, but I nodded. The video continued. A wealthy guest named Richard Holloway, one of my oldest clients, appeared in the hallway and handed Ryan a thick white envelope. "For your future," Richard said warmly. Ryan smiled, thanked him, and slipped the envelope inside his jacket before returning to Vanessa. He laughed and said, "That makes 3 today before the reception even starts." Whew, that was when another memory hit me. 2 weeks before the wedding, Ryan had sat across from me at dinner, asking casual questions about my house, my stores, my will, and whether Emily would ever have to worry. I had mistaken it for concern. Now I understood. He hadn't been asking as a son-in-law. He had been measuring the vault before deciding how to open it. I drove home from Daniel's studio with the flash drive in my jacket pocket, and Ryan's voice still crawling through my head. "The old man will pay. Emily just needs to cry at the right time." By the time I reached my beach house, the ocean looked darker than usual, like the whole coast had turned against me. I went straight to my office, locked the door, and opened the drawer where I kept the wedding folder. Emily had wanted the most expensive hotel in Charleston. At the time, she called it once in a lifetime. The ballroom faced the harbor, the flowers were imported, the champagne cost more than my first truck, and the band charged by the hour like surgeons. I remembered suggesting a smaller wedding, something elegant but reasonable. Emily had touched my hand and said, "Daddy, I only get married once." I had believed her because fathers are fools when their daughters look at them with tears in their eyes. Then I found the note she had sent about gifts. No registry, no appliances, no china, cash only. "It's more practical," she had written. "Ryan and I want to build a future, not collect things." I had admired that sentence once. Now it sounded like a sales pitch. I opened my bank records and began printing everything from the last 3 months. The first strange charge was a house deposit labeled temporary hold, $10,000. Then came a $5,000 investment consultation fee connected to Ryan's real estate office. After that, a jewelry invoice from a boutique on Meeting Street. Diamond earrings Emily had worn at the rehearsal dinner and told me Ryan bought her. He hadn't. My account had. Then I checked the emergency account I had given Mason access to years ago, back when I still believed he only needed a safety net. There were withdrawals for restaurants, electronics, hotel bars, and one payment to a truck dealership outside Savannah. I called the dealership and asked for the paperwork. The salesman emailed it within minutes. My signature was on the deposit form, except I had never signed it. Mason had forged my name to reserve a new pickup truck. That afternoon, Tiffany walked into my office holding a folder of her own. She smiled too sweetly and said she had printed a simple medical power of attorney, just in case anything ever happened. Before I could answer, Clara Bennett called from next door. Her voice was tight. "Thomas, I don't like repeating ugly things, but I heard Tiffany tell someone, once he ends up in a hospital, everything gets easier." I looked at the paper in Tiffany's hand and finally understood. Ryan wasn't the only one circling my life like property. That evening, I kept Tiffany's medical power of attorney form on my desk like a warning sign. I had not signed it. I had not thrown it away either. I wanted to remember the look on her face when she handed it to me. Soft smile, careful voice, hungry eyes. After Clara's call, every word in that document felt less like concern and more like a net being lowered over my life. Around 9, I left my office to make tea. The house was dim except for the light spilling from the guest wing upstairs. Halfway down the hallway, I heard Mason laughing. Not his lazy, careless laugh. This one was sharper, excited. Tiffany said, "Turn the volume down." Then Emily's voice came through the speaker, clear enough to stop me where I stood. "I don't care what Ryan does with Vanessa," Emily said. "That was part of the arrangement. He gets his freedom, I get the wedding money, and in a few months we file like civilized adults." My hand tightened on the stair rail. My own daughter sounded calm, almost bored, as if marriage were just a contract written in invisible ink. Mason laughed again. "Beautiful. So you split the cash gifts, he keeps his girlfriend, and Dad thinks his princess got her dream wedding." Emily replied, "Only if he stays emotional. That's why I asked for the house money. If he pays once after the wedding, he'll pay again during the divorce." Tiffany added, "And while he's focused on you, we keep working on the beach house." I stepped closer, careful not to make the old floorboards creak. Mason said, "I just need him exhausted. A few more months of complaints, repairs, bills, maybe some broken stuff around the house. Eventually, he'll decide it's easier to sign the place over or buy us something else." Tiffany's voice dropped lower. "If he refuses, we start telling people he's slipping, forgetful, unstable, not safe alone." Then Mason said the words that cut deeper than anything Ryan had said on that video. "Dad is lonely. Lonely people are easy to control." Silence followed. Then Emily laughed. "Exactly. And if I tell him I'm pregnant before the divorce, he'll melt. He always does when family is involved." I stood in the hallway, unable to move. My children were not confused. They were not desperate. They were strategic. Emily told Mason to break small things first. The coffee maker, a lamp, maybe the back gate. "Make the house feel like a burden," she said. "Then let him think selling or paying you off was his idea." I returned to my office without making tea. I shut the door quietly, sat at my desk, and opened a notebook. For the first time in my life, I wrote down my children's names like suspects, not family. The next morning, I drove into downtown Charleston with a folder on the passenger seat and the flash drive from Daniel in my coat pocket. I had spent the night organizing everything: bank statements, wedding invoices, Mason's forged truck deposit, Tiffany's medical power of attorney form, notes from the video call, and copies of the deed to my beach house. For the first time in years, I was not carrying guilt. I was carrying evidence. Margaret Ellis's office overlooked Broad Street, above a law firm with polished brass doors and old brick walls. Margaret Ellis was in her late 50s, tall, composed, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a low bun, and the kind of eyes that made lies feel useless. She greeted me with a firm handshake and no false sympathy. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, "tell me what you're trying to protect." I placed the folder on her desk. Everything I built before my children finished taking it. For the next hour, I told her everything. Daniel's video, Ryan and Vanessa, Emily's plan to split the wedding money, Mason's forged signature, Tiffany's hospital comment, the fake concern about my health. Margaret listened without interrupting, taking notes in clean, sharp lines. When I finished, she inserted the flash drive into her computer and watched just enough of the footage to understand. Her expression did not change, but her jaw tightened. "This is not family conflict," she said. "This is coordinated financial pressure." Then she opened another file on her computer. "I also had my assistant do a preliminary check after your intake call. Emily contacted your bank 2 weeks ago asking whether your name could be used as a guarantor on a mortgage application." My chest went cold. "Without asking me?" Margaret nodded. She did not complete it, but she was exploring the path. Margaret explained my options plainly. Mason and Tiffany had no lease, no rent receipts, and no ownership claim. Legally, they could be served with a notice to vacate. My businesses, home, investment accounts, and personal assets could be moved into an irrevocable trust with professional oversight. Beneficiaries could be changed. Access could be restricted. But understand this, she warned. When people lose access to money they believed was theirs, they often become louder, crueler, and more reckless. I thought of Mason's voice in the hallway. Lonely people are easy to control. I thought of Emily laughing about using tears as strategy. Then I thought of my wife, Helen, who had helped me build our first store with second-hand shelves and unpaid weekends. I had protected everyone except the life we created. "Do it," I said. Margaret began drafting the notices that afternoon. Before I left, I called Clara Bennett. She answered on the second ring. "Clara, I may need you to write down anything you see or hear from Mason and Tiffany. Dates, times, witnesses, everything. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Thomas, I've been waiting for you to ask. I'll help." When I walked out of Margaret Ellis's office, the city looked the same, but I did not. I was still a father, but for the first time in years, I was also my own defense. By Friday afternoon, Margaret's courier delivered 2 sealed envelopes to my house. One had Mason's name on it, the other had Tiffany's. I placed them on my desk and stared at them for nearly an hour. 30 days. That was all the law required, but it felt like I was finally putting a lock on a door that had been open far too long. I found them in the sunroom. Mason was stretched across my wicker sofa, scrolling through his phone. Tiffany sat beside him with a glass of wine from a bottle I had bought, her bare feet resting on my coffee table. I set the envelopes down between them. "You both have 30 days to leave this house," I said. "The notices are legal. Margaret Ellis will handle everything from here." Mason ripped his open first. His face turned red before he finished the first paragraph. "You've got to be kidding me." Tiffany opened hers slowly, then pressed a hand to her chest as if I had physically wounded her. "Thomas, where am I supposed to go?" she whispered. "I don't have anywhere." I looked at the wine glass in her hand, the expensive bracelet on her wrist, and the room she had treated like a hotel lobby. "You have 30 days to answer that question." Mason slammed his palm on the table so hard the glass jumped. "This house should be mine someday. I'm your only son." The words hung in the room, ugly and honest. "Someday is not today," I said, "and inheritance is not a salary." He called me cruel. Tiffany cried. Mason threatened to tell everyone in Charleston that I had thrown my own family into the street. I let him talk. Threats sounded smaller once I stopped being afraid of them. The next evening, Emily arrived with Ryan carrying covered dishes and a bottle of expensive wine. Emily wore a soft blue dress and the sweet, worried expression she used when she wanted something. Ryan looked polished as always, tan, smiling, confident. "Dad," Emily said, kissing my cheek, "we're not here to argue. We just want to heal this family." Dinner was baked salmon, roasted potatoes, and lies. For 15 minutes, everyone acted normal. Then Emily touched my hand. "This house is too much for one man. The stairs, the repairs, the storm damage every season. Maybe it's time to simplify." Ryan leaned in. "The market is strong. Oceanfront property like this could bring a fortune. I know a broker who could get you a private valuation." I looked at him. "You mean the broker who came here Tuesday and walked the backyard with Mason?" Ryan's smile froze. Tiffany looked down. Mason shifted in his chair. Emily recovered first. "Dad, we're only trying to help." Mason slammed his hand down again. "Help means being fair. Sell the place. Give everyone a fresh start." That was when I saw it clearly. Emily's concern, Ryan's market advice, Tiffany's tears, Mason's anger, 4 different masks, 1 target. My house. And they had all come to dinner to take it from me politely. 3 nights after the fake dinner, I invited all 4 of them back to my house. Emily sounded relieved on the phone, as if she believed I had finally softened. Mason asked if this meant I was ready to talk like family. Tiffany said she would bring dessert. Ryan simply said, "Glad you're being reasonable, Thomas." None of them knew that I had already placed a small projector at the end of the dining table, facing the blank white wall behind them. Before they arrived, Margaret Ellis stood in my living room, dressed in a dark suit, calm and watchful. I had asked her to stay out of sight unless things turned ugly. Daniel had emailed a signed statement that afternoon confirming the wedding footage was original, unedited, and taken directly from his backup camera. I printed it and placed it beside the projector. Clara Bennett had also come to the front door with a folder of handwritten notes. "Dates, times, descriptions," she said, "every time Mason showed strangers around your backyard." Dinner was quiet at first. Emily smiled too much. Ryan praised the food. Mason kept glancing toward the hallway, probably looking for signs that I had changed my mind. Tiffany dabbed her eyes before anyone had even said anything emotional. When the plates were cleared, I stood, picked up the projector remote and said, "Before we discuss my house, my money, or my future, there's something everyone needs to see." The wall lit up. Ryan appeared in his tuxedo, standing in the hotel dressing room with Vanessa. The kiss filled the room first. Then came his voice, clear and cruel. The old man will pay. Emily just needs to cry at the right time. Ryan shot to his feet. That's taken out of context. Emily went pale, but not surprised. That told me more than her words ever could. Then I played the audio from the call I had recorded on my phone from the hallway. Emily's voice filled my dining room, talking about the divorce plan. Mason discussed exhausting me until I gave up the house. Tiffany suggested making people believe I was no longer mentally stable. The silence afterward was so complete I could hear the ocean beyond the windows. Emily was the first to speak. "Dad, you misunderstood." Ryan turned on her instantly. "This was your idea." Mason pointed at me and shouted, "You had no right to record us." Tiffany began crying, but no tears came. I placed Daniel's statement, Clara's notes, and Margaret's legal packet on the table. My assets are now protected in a trust. The house is not for sale. Mason and Tiffany will leave on the date listed in their notices. Emily, there will be no down payment, no emergency loan, no divorce rescue, and no more checks. Mason stepped toward me, but Margaret entered the room before he crossed the carpet. "I would advise you to sit down," she said. He stopped. For the first time, all four of them looked smaller than their lies. I looked at my children and felt grief, but not weakness. "This family was not destroyed tonight," I said. "It was exposed." On the 30th morning, Mason and Tiffany were still in my house. I knew it before I even opened the front door. Their cars were in the driveway, the curtains in the guest wing were still drawn, and a half-empty coffee cup sat on the porch railing like they planned to enjoy another ordinary day under my roof. But that morning was not ordinary. Standing beside me was Margaret Ellis, calm in a navy suit, holding a folder thick with legal documents. Behind her, a local police officer named Officer Grant, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s with a steady voice and tired, experienced eyes, stepped out of his cruiser. I knocked on my own front door. Mason opened it after the third knock, unshaven, angry, and barefoot. "You brought cops?" he snapped. Officer Grant moved one step forward. "Sir, you were served a lawful notice to vacate. The deadline is passed. You need to collect your personal belongings and leave the property." Mason's face twisted. "This is family business." "No," Margaret said. "This is a legal matter." Tiffany appeared behind him in a silk robe, already crying loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. "Thomas, please," she sobbed. "You can't throw us out like animals. Where are we supposed to go?" A few curtains moved in the houses nearby. Then Clara Bennett stepped onto her porch, silver hair pinned neatly, cardigan buttoned, eyes sharp as ever. "He gave you 30 days, Clara called across the lawn, "and I watched you spend most of them drinking wine, ordering takeout, and telling people this house was already yours. Thomas has endured more than enough." For once, Tiffany had no answer. Mason tried to step toward me, shoulders squared, but Officer Grant raised a hand. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be." Mason stopped. His anger had always looked bigger when no one challenged it. Under the law, it shrank fast. They were given time to gather clothing, personal documents, and small belongings. No furniture, no appliances, nothing that belonged to the house. Mason cursed under his breath while stuffing clothes into trash bags. Tiffany cried into her phone, telling someone I had ruined their lives. I stood in the entryway and watched them carry their bags out one by one. I did not help. I did not argue. I did not apologize. When their car finally backed out of the driveway, Mason rolled down the window. "You'll die alone in that house." I looked at him and said, "Better alone than surrounded by people waiting to inherit me." Then they were gone. The fallout came quickly. Emily and Ryan's marriage collapsed exactly the way liars collapse, loudly, publicly, and while blaming each other. Ryan claimed Emily had planned the money scheme. Emily claimed Ryan had used her and hidden Vanessa. Their divorce became a battlefield over wedding gifts, credit card charges, and legal fees. Someone sent Daniel's verified video to Ryan's real estate firm. Within a week, he lost a luxury waterfront deal that would have made him rich. Clients stopped returning his calls. Emily called twice, furious, then desperate. I ignored the first call. On the second, she left a message saying she had sold the diamond earrings to pay her attorney. I almost felt sad. Then I remembered those earrings had been purchased with my money. A few months later, the house was quiet in the best possible way. I changed every lock. I repaired the guest wing, and turned Helen's old sitting room into a reading room, just the way my late wife would have loved it. Soft lamps, white curtains, shelves of her favorite novels, and a framed photo of her smiling beside the first furniture store we ever opened. I also started the Helen Whitaker Scholarship Fund for children in Charleston who had no family support. A portion of my business profits went to the community center downtown, where young people could learn woodworking, repair skills, and basic business lessons. For the first time in years, my money was helping people who were grateful, not entitled. Daniel Price became a friend. Sometimes we met for coffee and talked about cameras, old movies, and the strange ways truth finds daylight. Clara came over every Sunday morning with lemon muffins, and we drank coffee on the back porch while the ocean moved quietly beyond the dunes. Then, one afternoon, Emily called again. This time I answered. "Dad," she said softly, carefully, like she was testing a door. "I need help, just a little, please." I looked around my peaceful house. The clean counters, the locked doors, Helen's reading room, the life I had taken back. "No," I said. There was silence on the line, then I gently hung up. I was still her father, but I was no longer her bank, her backup plan, or her fool. I had lost the illusion of a loving family, but I had gained something better than a lie. My dignity, my home, my peace. And this time, I intended to keep all three. So tell me, if you were Thomas, what would you have done? Would you forgive your children because they are still family? Or would you protect your peace after realizing they only saw you as a wallet? Would you give Emily one last chance after everything she planned? Or would one final no be the only answer she deserved? And what about Mason and Tiffany? Did Thomas go too far by forcing them out? Or did they lose the right to stay the moment they tried to take what wasn't theirs? I want to know your honest opinion. Was Thomas cruel? Or was he finally brave? Comment your choice below. And if this story made you feel something, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful, emotional stories like this.